Hey everybody, this is Mike Peters from The Alarm. This is Barside Jive. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to the show. Let's welcome to Barside Jive, Mike Peters, best known as the frontman for The Alarm, one of the most popular new wave pop bands of the 1980s. Mike, it is great having you here.
Great to be here. Fantastic to be virtually in Texas.
You really are, Mike. You are in Texas. You are at AJ's bar in
Fantastic.
downtown Grapevine. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I wish I was there having a beer with you guys right now, but I'm in lockdown in Wales and you can't buy, it's like prohibition here now. You can't buy a drink in Wales.
Oh, you can't?
No alcohol allowed to be served in the country.
Seriously?
Yeah, you can go to the supermarket, but you can't go to a bar and buy a beer at all. You can buy food, but no beer.
Now, this is because of COVID?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they're trying to stop the transition and keep people apart. You know. So,
Okay. Okay.
It'll pass one day soon. You know, we've got a vaccine now, so we're in good shape, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're making some progress.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of hope out there for us all, I think.
Yeah. It's about time, right?
Too right.
Yeah. Well, you know, since you brought up Wales, we live in a country that's like 244 years old. You live in a country that's like 29,000 years old, right? So kind of give us an idea of what it was like growing up in Wales.
Well, a little bit isolated, a little bit of a backward sort of part of the world in some ways. We were a conflicted country because we have the Welsh language and the English language. And I think that the juxtaposition of that and coming to terms with that as a Welshman was quite confusing and difficult. You didn't know whether to speak Welsh or English sometimes. And especially when you started a band, it would have been easy in some ways to be a Welsh language band because there was a lot of support for Welsh language art and you could get on TV pretty quickly. But being a Welsh band that was English speaking, that was a whole different kind of challenge. And when we used to try and go to the big cities to get gigs, as soon as we said we were from Wales, they just put the phone down on you. They wouldn't talk, you know, because for young bands, when you started out, you get booked in a bar or something like that because they think you're going to turn up with 50 of your friends from work and, you know, your acquaintances. So when you move to London from Wales and you say, we're a Welsh band, they think it's just going to be the band on stage and that's it.
Right.
So in the end, to be honest, what we had to do with The Alarm was we uprooted from Wales through a friend, Simon Shaw, who had just left art college in London. He let us have his flat in Battersea in South London. And we took over that. We had a London phone number all of a sudden. We had a London address. And we'd phone up venues and we'd put on a London accent. Hey, man. Oh, sorry, that's an American accent.
Right.
Confusing you. But we'd phone up and we'd say, can we have a gig? And they say, where are you from? We say, we're from Battersea. And here's our phone number. And they book us a gig. And so the subterfuge, it worked for us. But, you know, it was always tough coming from Wales in, you know, the 70s and the 80s. Wales didn't have a history of producing great bands as such. There were some great artists from Wales like Tom Jones and Dylan Thomas, the poet, and Richard Burton, the actor. Some amazing artistic characters, but no real bands to speak of. And until, you know, there were some bands like Man, things like that had come out, Budgie even, but they didn't really break it through on a huge scale like The Alarm did in the 80s and fly a Welsh flag when we were always flying a Welsh flag when we were on stage. So very proud to come from Wales.
Wow. So what is the Welsh language sound like?
Rydw i'n siarad Cymraeg dipyn bach. That's how it sounds.
Wow. What did you say?
I said I speak Welsh a little bit.
Oh, can you say bar side jive in Welsh?
Bar side chop in Welsh. You have to do it with the accent, you know. That's
okay.
it.
Yeah.
You need to say bar side
Yeah.
Cymraeg.
Man, that's cool.
A lot of English words or American words that come along that are added into this. You know, the Welsh language is the oldest language in the world. The oldest piece of literature anywhere in the world is in the Welsh language. It's called the Gododdin. It's a piece of a parchment that goes right back to the beginning of language. And so when words get added to this ancient language, they just get sort of used with an accent rather than anything different, you know. So bar side would be assimilated into the Welsh language almost as it is in American.
Wow, that's very cool. So tell us, Mike, who was your biggest influence, like early on in your career?
Yeah, early on for me, it was seeing Top of the Pops, seeing bands like Slade and Sweet, the 70s glam rock bands. And Ril's in the heart of the Northwest. It's almost like New Jersey of Wales, if you like, of England, Britain. You know, it's a coastal area. You have lots of holiday camps. And in the 60s, when I was growing up, a lot of show bands would come through and play. And in some clubs like the Dixieland in Rhyl, you would see the big bands of the day, like Slade and Sweet and Mud, things like that. And T-Rex, obviously, they were a big influence. All those 70s glam bands. But I think really seeing David Bowie doing Starman, that sort of crystallized something in you that you thought, hang on, I could maybe have an aspiration to do so. I'd love to do something like that, you know. Right. Or when I was in school, the girls had a sort of pop magazine, and every week there was a double-page spread that if you pulled out one week and waited till the second week and added to it, over a 5-week cycle, it was making a life-size picture of Mark Bolan from T-Rex, you know. And the first time I saw it was just the shoes. And I thought, right. who's that dude? Who's wearing those kind of shoes? So ballet shoes. And then these velvet trousers appeared, and then a big belt, and then a jacket, and then the head appeared. You know, it's like all that the curls and the stars and in the makeup, the glitter, but the wall where it was put up on was surrounded by girls, and I thought, that guy's got something going for him. And I think that those are the things that attracted you to be in a band. I would have loved to have been a football player and been like George Best, who played for Man United, or Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton, those kind of people. But I wasn't good enough at that. But music gave you some kind of hope that you could attain that sort of lifestyle for yourself. And so again, in the 70s, what really pushed me over the edge was I saw the Sex Pistols in 1976 in October. Right. Before it exploded into the sort of joke rock that it became later in life. You know, when they came to America, it was almost a joke, wasn't it? And they were playing in Texas in those Longhorn kind of bars, and it wasn't so good. You know, it was a bit of a pantomime by then with Sid Vicious. But the band I saw was a really tight, direct band. They were playing songs like Substitute by The Who. Yeah. But they were playing them like the single, you know, it lasted for 2.5 minutes. And it was a furious energy. And it wasn't like, you know, at that time, The Who would do Substitute and play it for 30 minutes with a 20-minute guitar solo, you know, and like it was on Live at Leeds. But the Pistols were just a direct sort of pop, almost a mod band. They were playing Small Faces songs, Stooges songs, and their own. And the lyrics of their own songs were incredible. And if you put yourself back into that time zone and hear things like Pretty Vacant at that time, you didn't know what that meant. You had no idea. It was like they'd come from another world. And when they started up with Anarchy in the UK, I mean, I didn't even know what Anarchy was. I'd never been taught that in school. So I thought, what a word, you know, what's that? And so that's really the trigger point where I thought, right, I'm going to start a band ASAP. And the first incarnation of The Alarm came from that, and we were called The Toilets. And we were pretty visceral, sort of the time punk band with some great tunes. We exploded into life, and we got to play with the Clash and Buzzcocks. But unlike those other bands, like the Pistols had Malcolm McLaren, or the Clash had, Bernie Rhodes to help direct their energy, to teach them. We had nobody. So we kind of imploded pretty quickly, and it took me a while to get a handle on it, and then we were able to move forward. But really, the Alarm is founded in that punk rock explosion. Our biography says we started in 1981, but that's just to cover up a whole bunch of sins that were committed from 1977 to then.
Right. I think we called you New Wave. Yeah,
I think that's what happened. When the Pistols came, they almost spat in the face of America, didn't they? And it was like, what are you doing? We're not. This isn't music, and rightly so. And I think really America experienced its own real punk rock new wave explosion when Nirvana and Pearl Jam came along, and they really changed things dramatically. And that was America's moment to have a big change from the dominance of 70s rock. When we came in the 80s, you would still hear the Who and Zeppelin and the Stones everywhere you went. And it was great music, but it was hard to break it down. The first new wave bands that really started to get a foothold were probably the Police, and then U2, to sort of start to break that dominance. And U2 took the Alarm on tour with them in America in 1983, and that was our really introduction to the USA, and great times were had by all.
Oh man, I can't imagine. Interesting that you mentioned Bowie as an influence, because I've heard that a couple of times in all of my interviews, but normally everyone credits the Beatles as being their major influence, but you're like the second person that's mentioned Bowie.
Yeah, well, I think I'm obviously a massive Beatles fan, and in my world, seeing, I never got to see the Beatles. They played in Rhyl. There's a plaque on the wall where they played in the High Street, where their first gig in Wales was in Rhyl, and but it seemed far away in a way, even though it wasn't in terms of distance. But the Beatles, their success seemed very far away. And when I graduated to music, they'd already split up. And it took a few years really to discover them properly as a band, because in the immediate aftermath of the 70s, there was so much great new music. The Beatles were almost forgotten about because they'd broken up. But I always liked John Lennon, and remember seeing him singing Instant Karma on TV and thinking, wow, now he's the real deal. And, and of course, when he was taken from us, when he was assassinated, that was really the birth of the Alarm right there, because we had a pop band at the time called 17, and we were obsessed with trying to get a record deal and trying to get ourselves known and become famous and all that kind of thing. And we managed to blag our way onto a Stray Cats tour. We pretended to be a support band at one of their gigs, and they kind of took a shine to us and invited us to the studio where they recorded Rock This Town and Runaway Boys. And
wow,
they'd just come over from America. They bought planes to go to America. They didn't know anybody. We just turned up in London, and we didn't know anybody either. So we graduated to each other and became friends. And then they took us on their first UK tour was the Runaway Boys tour, and that single was released. And that was really our breeding ground. We watched them intently every night and saw how amazing they were with their guitars and their whole look. And then we actually were playing with the Stray Cats the night Lennon was assassinated, and we woke up that next morning, and it was a real shock. I read about it on the tube train going into London, and a guy had his newspaper opposite me, and it said John Lennon assassinated in New York, and it was a real shock. And we drove home, and I was just listening to Lennon's music over and over on the radio. It was non-stop John Lennon and the Beatles, and I thought, this guy never compromised for 1 second. He didn't make music to become famous. He made music to try and change the world and affect people's lives. And what we were doing as a band felt so hollow. On our very next day, we played in Liverpool on Matthew Street, where the Cavern Club was. We were the first. The Alarm, well, we weren't called the Alarm. We were 17. We played with the Stray Cats at a place called Eric's / Brady's, it was called then. And we had to walk down Matthew Street to get to the gig, and it was covered in flowers and drenched in emotion and tears. And
Wow.
we played Please Please Me in our set, and the Stray Cats played. I saw her standing there, and they went wild when we played Please Me, but the place erupted when the Stray Cats launched into it, because they were the real deal, you know. And yeah, it was, and it just at that experience and all that so close, I just thought, you know, we've got to press the reset button here. We can't go on like this. Let's take a note from John Lennon, and it's shit, do or die from here. If they like us because we're going to write a whole set of new music, then great. But if they don't, stuff it. You know, at least we've had a go on our own terms at making the kind of music we want to write and produce. And, you know, two fingers to the record labels and the A&R men and the promoters who don't want to know us. Let's just go out and play some great music. And if we connect with people, brilliant. And that's what took us to London. And we changed the name to The Alarm. And we made a single called Unsafe Building. And we didn't do demos. We thought, if people like us, we'll want to hear our songs, we'll go into their office with our guitars and we'll sing in the room. We had acoustic guitars with pickups in them. And that made us very distinctive and gave us a real cutting edge when we got to London.
Wow. Let's go way back, Mike. And I want to know when you first realized, or maybe it was a family member that first realized that you had an interest in music.
Well, I think that would maybe, my sister was going out with a guy in a band, and he worked in a guitar shop as well that had in Rill called the Band Box. And I don't know what he was really after, but he offered to show me some guitar chords. I don't know if it was a way to get into our house to meet my sister or not.
Right.
But he turned up a couple of days and showed me a few chords, and it felt really difficult, you know, putting your fingers on the strings. But I never forgot the chords he showed me that day. You know, he showed me a C and an E and a D and an A. And then one day I was in school and the teacher said, "Does anyone play guitar?" And for some instinctive reason, I just put my hand up, went, "Yeah, I do." And it was like, oh, great. Well, this guy here wants to play, and he's looking for someone else. So his name was Mike Evans, and he showed me some chords, and I was just blagging it. And I suppose I've been doing that for the rest of my life, to be quite honest.
So when did you realize you had a voice?
Well, I think that was when we started the Toilets. It was the days before the internet and iPhones, and you had to make arrangements weeks in advance, and people actually stuck to them usually.
Yeah, right.
And so I'd found the singer from a place in Greenfield, which is not far away from where I live, but he still had to get the bus to town where I was. And one Friday night, I was waiting for him to get off the bus, and I'd arranged for us to rehearse the next day, our first rehearsal. And he never got off the bus. And I was like, oh no, and what am I going to do? So I went out on my night out where we were going, and the DJ in this club where we played Pretty Vacant by the Sex Pistols. And there was a guy pogo into it, and he was jumping up and down higher than anyone else. So, and I knew him from school. He was from Ireland. And I went in the middle of the dance floor and said, "Hey, mate," you know, his name was O'Malley. And I said, "Do you want to have a go at singing in this band tomorrow?" And he went, "Yeah, definitely." And he came along, and he was incredible. And he blew, his name was Richard Jones, but we called him O'Malley. He'd come from Coleraine in Northern Ireland. And he'd been brought to North Wales and as a young teenager. And when he came to my school, they put him on the seat next to me. He said, "Mike, you take care of this guy," and introduced him to the school and Wales, and became good friends. And, you know, and then when we left school, we kind of drifted apart a little bit, but I saw him in this club, and he joined the band, and he was electric. And he wasn't a singer, but he had massive presence on stage. And when we played with The Clash, he just destroyed them. He had the venue in the palm of his hand. It was incredible. And I often wonder if we'd survived, because the drugs pretty soon came calling and changed a few things around, and took O'Malley away from us, really. And it was a bit scary, but it was obviously with the best intentions. But it was you know, being someone who's fairly straightforward and come from a Welsh background, seeing someone that you know getting high on drugs can be pretty scary. And he disappeared from the band really and chased that life. And then it was almost something like, well, someone's got to take over the vocal duty. So, well, you know, and I thought to myself, well, O'Malley's not trained. He's not been a singer. He just threw himself off the stage and gave everything he had.
Right.
And that was really what gave me the confidence to have a go at it, you know. And so I started singing from that point and just worked my way into it. But I knew if I wanted to be any good, I had to give everything I had. You can't be, oh, I'll just do it because I'm a, you know, you've got to be a singer. You've got to be the singer. You've got to live in that suit. And that's what I've done ever since, you know, giving my all to the singing. And so luckily somewhere I was able to find a voice inside me.
Well, you did a great job. Well, you still do, but you did a great job. So we keep talking about the toilets. I really want to know, where in the hell did that name come from?
Well, we were sat in a bar, the same bar that the Alarm played its first ever gig. It was called the Victoria Hotel. It's still there in Prestatyn in Wales. And I was sat at the bar with a friend of mine who just moved back from London, who realized punk rock was something that he should be into. And I said, right, we're going to form a band. And he said, what are we going to be called? And a bit like the Ruttles, I looked up and there was a sign and it said, The Toilets. And that's literally what happened. And that was,
wow.
You know, that was it. We thought, what a great punk name, you know.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably needed to go to the bathroom at the time.
Wow. You know, Mike, there's a lot of cool shit that happens in the bar, right?
Yes, certainly does.
Yeah. Hence Bar Side Jive.
Yeah, you got it.
You know, you guys formed the Alarm back in, I guess, 81, right? 1981?
Yeah, we'd been together, as I say, in the Toilets and in 17, our previous bands. But 1981, we changed our name to the Alarm. We moved to London. We recorded our own single. And it was a do or die, as I said earlier. We had to give our all to this moment. I came up with a list. I said to the guys in the band, I said, we're not going to play at this anymore. We're either going to do this and die trying, or come back with the tails between the legs. But if we don't move to London and we don't give it one big shot, then we might as well forget it completely. And so we moved to London and then we got lucky. You know, things happened pretty fast.
That was a smart move.
Well, it was the only move. You know, there was no music scene where we lived other than for cabaret and for show bands. But there was, you know, you couldn't play your own material in a bar full of holiday makers. They wanted to hear hits, you know, and popular hits. They didn't want to hear some young band assaulting them with attitude and energy. And I knew that if we stayed in that environment, our energy, with that newfound energy we had through listening to John Lennon and realizing what that guy stood for, this new energy that we unleashed in ourselves, I thought if we don't take that somewhere where it can grow, it will destroy us. It will turn in on us and attack us. So we had to move to London where we could find some like-minded people who could help, you know, put more fire on our energy. And pretty soon we got there and we started getting gigs. Through pretending to be a band from London, we recorded our own single. There was a studio in Manchester, not far from where we lived, and we'd worked out that the Clash had worked there and recorded Bank Robber from Sandinista times in there. And we thought, wow, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And we saved up money from summer jobs. We all got jobs. I worked in a bar and saved up all the money so we could afford to buy this studio time, and we could get ourselves to London and afford the rent. And that's what we did. And when we had a single, it wasn't like a demo tape. If we could sell it to somebody at a gig, and then they become a real fan because they take the record home, play it, and think, I want to go and hear this again live. And they come to the second gig, and that's really how it all started.
Wow.
And then we played a gig. We got a gig with The Fall in London, and an agent from Wasted Talent, a music agency that looked after the Clash, the Police, and U2 saw us. We had a meeting with him the next day, and we were ready to go home. And he said, "I'll get you loads of gigs next year, and we'll really make things happen." And we were packing up, ready to go back to Wales. And the phone went, and he said, was Ian. His name was Ian Wilson. He said, "Do you want to play with U2 tonight?"
No kidding.
Yeah. So we turned up at the Lyceum Ballroom to play with this band U2.
Wait a minute. Did you tell me you had to think about it?
I did. Honestly.
No, you did not.
I swear, honestly, you must have heard some other interviews, but honestly, I was leaving that out because I've said it so many times. But he phoned up and said, "Do you want to play?" We had this policy when we moved to London because we'd been burnt so much, and we played the Stray Cats tour. We never got anywhere. We said, when we're the Alarm, we'll never support anybody ever again, and we meant it, man.
Wow.
Until we got a phone call, and the guy, I said, "It's Ian. He wants us to play with U2 tonight." I had my hand over the phone. What are we going to do? You know, and Eddie, the bass player, went, "No, let's stick to the, you know, we've only had these rules for a week. You know, we can't break it now." And Dave was like, "I don't know." And then Twist, the drummer, grabbed the phone. He goes, "Ian, of course we're going to play with U2 tonight." And off we went, you know, and I was setting up my amps. U2 didn't sound check that day because they played the night before. It was the last night of their October album tour, their second album tour. They were getting big in Britain by that point. They'd gone off to do some Christmas shopping, ready to go home. It's December the 21st. And so as we were setting up our gear and I was putting my own amps on the stage, and I felt his tap on my shoulder and looked round, it was Bono. And he'd come back to the gig ready for the show. And he said, "Hey, what's going on with these acoustic guitars you've got?" And I showed him, and it had all electric pickups, and he was intrigued by my harmonicas. He'd never really seen them up close before. He hadn't seen, you know, the acoustic guitars and harmonicas weren't things that you used in the punk rock new wave times. They were from the 70s, really.
Right.
And Bono was like, "Look, Mike, I'm really interested in playing the guitar. I'd love to get an acoustic guitar. I haven't got one, you know. It's not what we do in U2." And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And he, you know, "I can help you with that." And he said, "Why don't you come back to the hotel and after the show?" So he watched us, we watched them. I'd seen them once before in the Marquee in 1980, and they were amazing. And we got on like house on fire. And I went back to the hotel, showed him his first guitar chords and, you know, everything. Because at the time as well, when I met U2, they'd learned to play just by experimenting, and the Edge wasn't a classical guitarist in the true terms. He picked up a guitar and worked out things he could play. Right. So even in 1981, when I met him, he could hardly play a bar chord. He could just play shapes he'd worked out on the guitar fretboard for himself. And he was still coming to terms with the guitar. The first two U2 albums, he was learning to play the guitar. So he certainly had no time to sit down with his lead singer, so, you know, here's G, D, A minor and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So I'm the one who taught U2 how to play Knocking on Heaven's Door and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Wow.
Hey, it's me phoning up for a drink. Can you send one over to Wales?
Yeah. Well, you know what, Mike? One of these days you're going to be back in the Dallas area, and we're just going to
certainly am.
Have you come by.
Well, one of our first dates that I played with U2 on the War Tour in 1983 was in Dallas at the Bronco Bowl.
Oh,
in
yeah.
83.
Yeah.
And we both did an interview with George Gimmock on the old Rock and Roll Alternative.
Oh, yeah.
You know, on the radio station there. And we played in Houston and Austin. We absolutely fell in love with Texas big time in 1983. I remember going to Dallas, we loved it. And then Austin, we had a night off after the U2 show, and we went round to the 6th Street Live, and we'd never seen a place with all the bands. I mean, millions of bands.
Yeah.
You know, in the 80s, it was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we were coming from Wales, we were just blown away. It was like the best place on earth, all these bands, you know, wow.
Right.
So we had some great times in Dallas in 1983. And Houston, obviously, and Austin, Texas. We love it.
Well, you know, George is still around.
I know. I saw George last time we played we played out there in Dallas, and he was at the show and he introduced us, and he's a great guy.
Yeah,
to be thankful for George.
Well, I definitely can't wait till you play here again, because I definitely want to meet you in person.
Yeah, it'd be great, Dal. Fantastic. Here in your bar.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Let's have
that's
we'll have an
yeah.
after
We'll
show
we'll we'll
party.
we'll pick you up. We'll make that happen. That's for sure.
Brilliant.
That's for sure. You know, you've been in so many bands, Mike. The Alarm, the Toilets, Harry Hippie, 17, Color Sound, Dead Men Walking, the Mescaleros, on and on and on. So, which of those projects did you really enjoy the most?
Well, look, any chance to go and play with other musicians is a great thing. I think it broadens your horizons, gives you fresh impetus into your drive as a musician. You know, playing with the Dead Men Walking was always great because that wasn't just a fixed lineup. You know, I played with Captain Sensible, I played with Slim Jim from the Stray Cats, and I played with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols. Mick Jones from the Clash got up on stage. You know, I worked with Billy Duffy from the Cult, played in it. Brian Setzer, Lemmy from Motorhead came on stage with us. You know,
Oh,
it was fantastic to play with all those people and learn
yeah.
from them. It was incredible. It was a privilege. But you know, I got to sing for Big Country for a couple of years because I was really good friends with Stuart Adamson, and I was playing with them just before he passed away, and he was someone I was quite close to, and so I helped them out when it got to their anniversary year to try and get over the loss of Stuart, and made an album with them that's like a love letter to Stuart almost. And so I've been in some incredible situations, and I'm in this band with Billy Duffy from the Cult called Color Sound, which we've had. It's been a long running saga. We made an album in '99, and we've just made a new album now that's going to come out in January. So we're, you know, I think I've been lucky to be able to step outside the Alarm. I think having those diversions is great. You know, all the guys who play in the Alarm are in great bands. You know, they play in Gene Loves Jezebel or Archive, or Smiley, our drummer, was played with Joe Strummer in a Mescalero. And when Joe died, his band, it was so sudden, his band had never got to say goodbye to each other. And they lost Joe, and they sort of lost each other at the same time. And they wanted to get back together to sort of celebrate Joe's life.
Right.
And they said, well, who can sing? You know, and Smiley, the drummer, said, well, there's only one guy, and it's the guy from Wales from the Alarm. So I went on that to play some shows with them for a few weeks. And again, it was Joe's guitar tech, his tour manager, his best mates all on the road. And you know, as a Clash fanatic, to hear all the stories about Joe from people who'd lived a life alongside him, it was a magical time. And again, it just gives you that energy when you've been playing music in bands like I have for 40 years now, over.
Yeah.
You need those shots in the arm from time to time, you know, and I'm still a massive music fan. I'm always listening to music, and I believe if you surround yourself with good music, you'll write good music. And I'm always listening and exploring, and I've had a great life, and very, very I count my blessings every day that I'm still a musician.
Oh, yeah. You get to do what you love.
Absolutely, that's it.
You know, we got to rewind a minute because I really want to know, you guys were first Alarm, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like Duran, right?
Yeah. Well,
And then you changed it and you dropped one of the alarms. So what was that all about?
Well, I wrote a song for the Toilets called Alarm. And when we were sat around trying to come up with a name for the band, The Alarm, we were looking at, we were going to call ourselves the Black Sheep. We were going to call ourselves the Uprising. The Men of Harlech was mooted. And then, and I said, well, I've got this. The first thing I ever did creatively was write a song called Alarm. And they went, that's it. Let's call ourselves Alarm. So we wrote to John Peel, the DJ, to say we were going to play in a gig and we were going to be called Alarm. And he read the letter out on the radio. He got the letter from me, and he said, hey, I've had this letter from this guy, Mike, in Wales, and about his band, and they're going to be called Alarm. And he goes, there's a few of these bands with double barrel names, Alarm. There's Duran. We've got Talk. And he goes, I'm thinking of changing my name to John Peel. And we were listening on the radio, and I said to the lads, we're called The Alarm from now on, okay, boys?
Oh, yeah.
So we were christened by John Peel, ironically.
Yeah.
Bless him.
Yeah. Wow. Let's focus on some of your songs, particularly during the Alarm days. Just tell me a cool story, Mike, about at least one of the songs that you guys did.
Well, you know, we first came to America. The song that blazed the trail for us was called "The Stand," and that was had been written. A friend of mine gave me a book by Stephen King, which was called "The Stand," and I thought, what a great title for a song. And I read the book, and I thought, brilliant story. And
Right.
and I loved the idea of, it was almost like a book about today. It was almost about COVID then, wasn't it? You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was a lot of parallels in the you know, the way that people made their last stand for humanity. I thought, that feels like The Alarm. You know, let's write that into the song. And then I think it was almost like sampling the book, you know, in a way. And we toured around, and it became a big record in America. And Stephen King got to hear about it, but he hated it, disowned it. He wouldn't let his radio station he had in Portland play The Stand by The Alarm.
Really?
Because he thought we'd stolen it off him.
Oh, man.
Bless him. I think he's still got a bee in his bonnet to this very day, you know. That.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it was a time, you know, that time when we started, we kind of got caught up in a little bit of a tussle with the Clash when we started. The day we arrived in America was the last day the Clash played at the US Festival with Mick Jones. And it was almost like we had the territory to it. We burst onto the scene almost the very next day with acoustic guitars and people describing The Alarm as like Bob Dylan meets the Clash. And we had America to ourselves for a couple of years, and The Stand broke loose, and then next minute our other records did. And then in about 84, 85, the Clash Mark II arrived on the scene with Joe Strummer, and also at the same time, Big Audio Dynamite emerged with Mick Jones. And Mick Jones's and Big Audio Dynamite's first ever gig was supporting The Alarm in Glasgow. We got a call from our agent saying, I've got this band, we want them to open for you tonight. Can they just play it, do us a favor? It's like, yeah, of course. And I was stood on the sound check next to me. I thought, oh my God, that's Mick Jones from the Clash just walked in. What's he? And then Don Letts, you know, I was like, oh my God. And they were Big Audio Dynamite. And I think Joe Strummer got it into his head that we'd taken sides with Mick Jones. And then when Joe Strummer came over with Mark II Clash, and they started playing around, people were saying to him, hey, Joe, what about this band, The Alarm? You know, they're like the new Clash. What do you think about them? And he goes, oh, they're just a rapping on the chocolate bar, you know, a shadow of the Clash. And then they even busked outside when they came back to Britain, they busked outside our gig in Leeds. Leeds University, all the Alarm fans were queuing up to come in, and Joe Strummer and the Clash turned up and played to the Alarm crowd. And then, because it was very political university, the students there threw a load of red paint over the Clash because they were on CBS records and who was supporting apartheid in South Africa and all this kind of thing. And it all ended up in a pretty ugly scene because they opened the door for the Alarm gig and all the fans rushed in. And then Joe Strummer's left on his own, walking down the road covered in paint. It looked quite a sad figure. And we just, you know, always thought it strange that Strummer would have to put us down. But just before he died, there's an Alarm fan called Graham Lampin, who lives up on the northeast of America these days. And he was in Britain, and he had dinner in a restaurant in Nottingham with his wife. And Joe Strummer and his partner came in, and they ended up sitting on the next table. And as you do, they pulled the tables together and started chatting. And then Joe asked Graham who his favourite band was. And Graham said to Joe, look, Joe, you're probably not going to like this, but my favourite band's The Alarm. And Joe kind of looked around the room all secretively, and he said, well, I'll tell you what, Graham, I've got a bit of a secret to let you in on. He goes, don't tell anyone. But he goes, I used to dish it out to that Mike Peters. I thought he was taking over my part of the world. And with this new Alarm, you know, they were the new Clash. And I'd sort of give it to him in the press. And I'd always had the radio on the tour bus. So I'd get on the tour bus and I'd hear this music and I'd say to Cosmo Vinyl, our PR guy, who's this? This is amazing. And Cosmo would say, that's The Alarm, Joe. You're not supposed to like them. So
wow.
he turned out to be a closet Alarm fan in secret, Joe. So it was always nice to know that. So yeah.
Oh,
great,
yeah. Yeah.
Great tales, you know, great times to be involved in music.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You guys had so many great songs, but Rain in the Summertime.
Yeah, well, you have to come from Wales to know where that one comes from. We get a lot of it.
Yeah. But it's a great song, and especially that chorus. It's
Yes,
just,
well, it's one of those songs. It's
oh,
something that I've always looked for in my songs. That the verse chord is it goes to a major F sharp it's songs in B, and then the verse you go through F sharp major, but in the chorus it minors. So you get a big lift in the song because you're going from a major key into a minor key, and it's it's something the Beatles did a lot. So a lot of songwriters look for that kind of, if there's an opportunity to make that kind of change in a song, and it just so the second chord of the chorus is a minor, but it's a major in the verse, which gives it
right.
a huge big
It's a
lift.
great
And it
hook.
gives you that emotional whoosh when you hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have to give credit to John Porter, the producer, for unleashing that song, because when we were stepping up to make the Eye the Hurricane record, we'd done all the demos and recorded a lot of songs. And right before we went in the studio, John Porter said to me, "Mike, is there anything you've got that you've kind of like just saved for the end and you've just half rehearsed it, or it's a bit of an idea?" And I said, "Well, there's one thing we did on the last day, and I just had these chords, and the drummer was messing around with a drum machine, and and Dave were working out these guitar riffs, and I just sang a few words, and here's a tape of it, and it goes, it's called, I don't know what it's called, and I'm singing 'I Love to Feel the Rain in the Summertime,' and he said, he played it, that's really interesting, leave it with me." And he, at the times in 1987, he had an Atari in his producer's room in the studio, and he mapped out the recording that we jammed down once without knowing what it was. And he played it back to us in the studio with a drum machine going and everything. And it was like, wow, this is amazing. And we overlaid real drums, and then the guitar came in. But I was never comfortable with the lyrics. I said, I can't sing "I Love to Feel the Rain" sometimes. It's just about what I was looking out the window at the time, in Wales.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tried everything. He goes, "Mike, it's great,"
Yeah.
But I battered myself, and in the end, I gave up. And I thought, "John, you're absolutely 100% right." And you need that, as a musician, you can't often hear your own songs in the same way. You have no way of differentiating the good from the bad in your music. It's like I've got two boys downstairs, and asking me to say which is my favorite, I can't tell you. And it's the same with songs. They're part of you. You've created them. You can't say, "Oh, that's the A side and that's the B side."
Right.
That's where you need a producer to come in, or somebody who's sensitive enough to realize what place you're trying to get to, or what place you're trying to get from. And hats off to John Porter, because he helped us realize that song. Otherwise, it would have just been left on the cutting room floor.
Oh man, I'm glad it wasn't, because I love that song. I don't guess you'd sing a line from that song right now, would you?
Love to feel the rain in the summertime. I love to see the snow on the ground. We've done a special version of it for winter called "I Love to Feel the Snow in the Winter Time."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because we've got this big Christmas gathering coming up, and
Yeah.
we put a Christmas jukebox CD out, and we thought let's Christmas up some of the Alarm classics and give them a little twist for the season. So it's been good fun, and that's what a great song can do for you. You can change it around, and it's always a great song.
We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Your event coming up. I got to ask you if this is true, but when you left the Alarm, did you really walk off the stage?
I did. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It
Really?
was at Brixton Academy. Yeah, it was. I think we'd come to a point in our lives where, 1990 going into 91. Our friendship had sort of gone through a real challenge in 1987, and I don't think we really repaired it properly. And it was all about songwriting and who should be singing the songs in the Alarm and all this kind of stuff, and it was pretty pathetic, really. But we got away through it, and but I think it meant that we weren't all eyes on where we should be going. It was all about, let's keep everyone got a bit safe. They wanted the lifestyle to never end. No one wanted to rock the boat or or sort of break up the status quo or take the challenge on that was being laid down to us. You know, and when we, in 1990, we were about to release Happy Christmas War Is Over by John Lennon. We recorded a big version of that, and it sounded amazing and was all set to be a huge hit for the winter. And then the war broke out, the Gulf War started coming into, and radio was saying, we can't play this song, war's not over, it's just beginning. You know, and then when we got to 91 and in the January, and then the troops hit the Gulf state and planes started dropping artillery everywhere, and it just, the world became very ugly. And we made this really safe record called Raw. And I think we needed to, you know, the idea behind Raw was to make an unsafe record, a record that really reflected what was going on, a bit like what Neil Young had done with Rockin' in the Free World. Mm-hmm. And we ended up in this compromise where it's, well, you get to sing 3 songs and you get to write 3 songs. And it was like, that's not the way to make a record, you know, like a jigsaw. It's got to be, you know, you got to stick the pen in the heart and spill the blood all over the recording tapes.
Right.
And so I think we missed an opportunity to possibly have made what could have turned out to be our greatest album. Like when we made Unsafe Building, we were at that point 10 years down the road where we need to go unsafe again. And instead we forgot the part of it, and we just played it very safe so that everyone got an equal slice of the pie. You know, no one was the leader anymore. And so, you know, that became a very difficult phase for us. And I think that it led to the destruction of the band because we weren't talking enough. We weren't in the same room enough. You know, the other members of the band had got married. They never came back to live in Wales. 2 of them went to live in America and married American women. And it's very hard to be in a band when your relationship is transatlantic. And so when war happened and then Nirvana came along and Pearl Jam, we were just nowhere near ready to have that sort of take the gloves off and see where we could live in that kind of world. And I thought the only way I could survive this is to go it alone, really. And, you know, I thought the band doesn't want to change. They won't follow my leadership. So I'm going to have to walk away from it ultimately for the time being and see where life takes me. And we were due to have a sort of conversation the next day, but Dave, our guitarist, announced at the dressing room before the show that he couldn't stay till the morning because he was on the first flight out of London to go and do a gig in New York. And it was like, okay. And the cameras were rolling because the record label wanted us to stay touring the album and support it longer, which we couldn't because Dave was doing a solo tour. And so they filmed our last gig to kind of perpetrate the album longer. And so I thought, well, the cameras are rolling. I'll say what I've got to say to him tomorrow. I'm going to say it now. And boom. It was very instinctive. In fact, on the actual night, I actually thought Dave was going to leave the band before me because he was doing a solo album. He was very adamant that this was where the tour ended and he wanted to carry on his own tour. And
right
before we played a song called God Save Somebody, which he was singing, he introduced the wrong song, and I thought his nerves got the better of him, and I thought he was supposed to say something then, but he didn't. And it was a really strange night, you know, a great night on many levels. And when you look back on it, you think we wouldn't have half a story to tell if that happened, you know. So
yeah.
We definitely didn't do things by, you know, we definitely crashed into the world and crashed out. You know, we definitely burnt out rather than faded out. That was, you know, as the great Neil Young song says. And
Right.
and that's how it's been. You know, we've never, whatever reason, life has impacted big on us. You know, we had our first hit in America, not in Britain. We went like the normal bands. You know, we were from another world really, and life's affected us all in different ways. But yeah, we're still good mates. You know, we've got it's our 40th anniversary next year, and we've got a big anthology coming out, and you know, I've been going through all that, and Dave, our guitarist, he actually plays with us these days. You know, he plays on all the shows. Eddie's, you know, we've just done weeks and weeks of internet broadcasting through the lockdown called The Big Night In, and all the original members have been on the show, and all the current members have been on the show, and we don't describe ourselves as a band almost anymore. We're like this massive extended family now. That's how we
awesome.
roll, and that's how the gathering, you know, our event that we've got coming up this Saturday is a celebration of all our times, all the times we've lived through. You know, we're a proper family. So, and families
Right.
have bust ups, don't they? You can't just have it can't just be saccharine and sweet all the way through. You have to have these moments where the thorns come out and they prick the skin and make you do things that you didn't intend to do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now in 96, I understand you were diagnosed with cancer.
I was diagnosed with an illness. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I went into a spontaneous remission almost after a few months, and it was the start of a journey where really I was advised at that time to have a bone marrow transplant, which I decided not to because I was going on tour the next day to America. And it really saved my life, you know, the life I live, put it that way. As if I'd had the transplant, my life would have changed. I might never got back to be a singer or to be able to stand on a stage. And as it turned out, 10 years later, I got re-diagnosed with leukemia, and that's what I'd had in 1996. But it was confusing because the leukemia I have, the chronic lymphocytic leukemia, is almost a clone of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's one microcosm out, but that one microcosm makes all the difference. So the leukemia I have is a chronic disease, but it can rise and fall. Your blood count can go up and then it can go down. And it's almost like can hide itself away from in your body and then come back to attack you again at later stages. And that disease I have with the name now was undetectable in that it was grouped in with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so when I was discovered, my blood was at the high point, and the doctors wanted me to have a transplant. But when I went on the tour and came back, my blood count had gone back down under the radar. So they were like, this is incredible, you know, because I don't think they'd ever had anybody up to that point in life say, I'm not going to have a bone marrow transplant. So they never got to do that kind of research. So let's take two people with a high blood count. They both got, you go and have a transplant. Let's see what happens to you when you go back on tour. And I think it was sort of, my doctor always says to me to this very day, you bought yourself your rock and roll life by fighting me and saying you weren't going to have a transplant and going on tour to America. So I've been very lucky. And I seem to have been one of those cancer patients that sort of always seem to stay one step ahead of the sheriff. Just when he's about to pull the trigger and I have to face up to maybe going in for a transplant, a new drug has come along from the sidelines and snatched my life back from the jaws of death. And that's how I've been ever since. You know, I've been really lucky.
Well, Mike, thanks for sharing that. I want to talk about your foundation, Love, Hope, and Strength.
Yeah, well, it's Love, Hope, and Strength was founded between myself in Wales and a gentleman from Dallas, Texas, named James Chippendale, who was a leukemia transplant survivor. And I've got a lot of friends in the Dallas, Austin area. A friend called Richard Reese, who always used to get me to South by Southwest in those early days when no one knew what it was. And I was re-diagnosed with leukemia in 2005. And I couldn't go on tour because I was having proper chemotherapy. I couldn't get insurance to travel. And I wanted to go and play at South by Southwest. I thought we've got an album, ironically, called Under Attack. If I'm going to play one gig and tell America about this album, I need to go to South by Southwest and share it through that medium. And Jules was scared because she knew I couldn't have any insurance for any treatment or mishaps that might happen. So she called Richard Reese in Austin, Texas, and asked if he could help me around the American health system should I need it. And he said, look, I've got this guy called James Chippendale. He's a transplant survivor. He'll help you. He connected us. I flew into Dallas. He picked me up at the airport. I'd never met him. I thought he was going to be some boring insurance guy. And he turned out to be a great little rock and roll fiend. And he was a real survivor. He wasn't on the stage side of music. He was in the business side,
right,
arranging insurance for bands and venues. but he had a great personality and large in life character. And when he took me to the Baylor Institute in Dallas for second opinions, and they told me my doctor in Wales had got it absolutely 100%. It was a world class like them, and it was a truly amazing, enlightening experience. And when James came to visit me in Wales for a payback visit, I took him to Snowdon, to the mountains, and told him about this idea. I had to start a foundation, and we came up with the idea of calling it Love, Hope, Strength. And he said, look, I said, look, I've got this idea of climbing this mountain. He said, well, look, I'm from Texas. We do big things in Texas. He goes, let's not stop here. Let's go to Everest. And we did. In 2007, we went to Mount Everest, Texas and Wales charity, Love, Hope, Strength. And we did then the highest concert in the world on land, above the base camp in Everest. And it was an incredible experience. And it was filmed, and it was shown out live on VH1 in America, Palladia, and really put our charity on the map. And we've saved a lot of lives since.
Wow, that is very cool. That is very cool. Yeah. So you've got this annual event. It's an annual weekend event, right? You call the Gathering?
That's right. The Gathering. Yeah, we've started it in 1992. And it was really when the band was defunct and our fans were disconnected. We were in a, we didn't have the same voice around the world as we did in the 80s, we're through the music industry and getting on the radio and things like that. And we thought, well, I can't tour as much, so why don't we find a way for the fans to come to us, or like a rock and roll reversal. So we set up an event in Wales, and we told everyone where it was and what was happening. And we said, you get on the trains and the planes and the automobiles, and we'll put on the big gig. And it's been running every year ever since. And obviously COVID has impacted on that. So we decided to go for a virtual one and have it at Christmas, because the very first one was actually set up in December 1992. And then after 3 years, we moved it to the new year, and it became a bigger and bigger event. And so in the spirit of the first ever Gathering, we're going to have a virtual concert on December the 19th in partnership with Moment House, which was set up by Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. It goes out live 8 p.m. in your time zone in Dallas there, and it goes out on different time zones across America and the UK. And it's going to be a fantastic show. We've got a lot of surprises. The band's going to be playing live. I'll be playing some acoustic stuff at the jukebox stage, and we've got some great footage and content to share with people. And it's going to be an incredible night. And all our fans are gathering in their own homes. And it's like, for the fans, I think it's like their chance for $20 hiring the alarm to play in their front room on their TV, and they're going to get their friends round, get the beers in, turn it up loud.
Oh yeah.
Annoy the neighbors. And it's going to be a fantastic night, and a great way to sort of forget about what the world's gone through this last 12 months and just get back to some sort of normality, enjoy a rock and roll gig, have a few beers, have a laugh. I know we're not all in the same room, but we're in the same world, and we're connected through the spirit of rock and roll.
You are watching Barside Jive with my guest, singer, songwriter, musician, and frontman Mike Peters of the Welsh new wave pop rock band The Alarm. You are watching Barside Jive with my guest, singer, songwriter, musician, and frontman Mike Peters of the Welsh new wave pop rock band The Alarm. I understand that Jules, your wife, is in the band.
Yeah, she's been playing with us, off and on since she first joined the whole thing in 1986, became part of the family, so she's always been playing and helping out. She's a really great, talented musician. She's a classically trained pianist and great singer. So she's been in and out and helping us out, or in the background and in the foreground at various times. She was helping me a lot musically in the early 90s. And then when we started to try and have kids, she stepped away from the spotlight, but has always been involved, and she's a real rock.
Right.
And she's a big part of what we do, she's really played a big part in rebuilding all the friendships that get stretched at times when things have to change, and I'm a great believer you have to change to survive. And sometimes that can cause casualties. And so Jules is great at helping reconnect all that. And she played a big part in bringing all the original guys back around and getting us all in the same page again and becoming friends. And, it's really great. And because we've had a long standing relationship. You know, we've been married since 1988. We got engaged a week after we met. and we're still going strong, you know, so
that's awesome.
Yeah, we've got very strong family backgrounds. You know, we've never left Wales really, you know, only to help make the band, and we've always lived here and put all our roots are here. So yeah, that's you know, it's everything the Alarm stands for, really.
Yeah. Mike, what's next for you?
Well, we've got the Christmas gathering this weekend, and then I'm going to have a little break over Christmas. But we've got a lot of plans for next year because it's the Alarm's 40th anniversary. We've got 2 massive shows in Wales and in June that mark the anniversary of the band. We're actually playing a gig on May the 23rd in the Victoria Hotel where the band was born, where the Alarm played its first ever gig.
That'll be cool.
And the gig is at the foot of Offa's Dyke, which is a huge walk along the border of Wales and England, an ancient border of King Offa. And we're hiking all, and the gig we played, our first gig was at the start of Offa's Dyke, is at the foot of the dike. So we're going to walk from that venue straight after we played the show. We set off on a 177 mile Love, Hope, Strength hike to raise funds for cancer patients and cancer initiatives. And it's all the way to our next gig, which is going to be in Cardiff in South Wales at St. David's Hall, which is on the anniversary of the first ever Alarm gig. So we're kind of spiritually walking from the site of the Alarm's birth to where the next phase of our future begins on June the 5th, 2021, when we play the 40th anniversary gig and we set off on all the new adventures we're going to write for ourselves in the coming years.
Wow. How cool is that?
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah.
Man. And so when you come into Dallas?
Well, 2022 it will be in Dallas. You know,
really?
I think safely we probably can't travel to America next year unless it's maybe for an acoustic show, a one-off. I'm due to play in New York on June the 12th. But even now, it's looking tenuous whether I'll be able to fly to America in that first 6 months or not. We don't know. So we're hoping that from a band point of view, we can be looking at the summer of 2022, which is still in our 40th year anniversary celebration timeframe, and really coming out into America with a 40th anniversary Alarm tour, playing all the songs that everybody knows and having a fantastic time. And that's what we're looking forward to. Yeah,
that's going to be awesome. I can't wait. Mike, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a blast.
Oh, Dale, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Great chatting with you. Some great stories today. Brilliant.
Well, thank you very much. Well, Mike, I wish you and your family happiness and much continued success. Guys, be sure to buy your ticket to the Alarm's Christmas gathering live around the world on December 19th. You can go to their website to purchase tickets at thealarm.com. Also, you can find out what they're doing and go listen to some of their music today. Better yet, just go wherever you buy your music and get some of the Alarm. I'll have links in the description below, so all you have to do is click. I'll just make it that easy. Right. We'll help them out, won't we, Mike?
We will. Help them out, Dal. That's it.
Thanks, guys, for hanging out with me and Mike today. And please like and share this video and click subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's free. And then click that tiny little bell to receive those notifications when I post something new. That will wrap this episode of Barside Jive. And until next time, stay safe and happy. I will see you very soon. In the meantime, peace, love, and rock and roll.
Peace, love, and rock and roll.
Senses. Lows that evolve into highs that pierce. Feel the rock on 98.